All right. I call to order this regular meeting of the King George County Service Authority Board of Directors. We'll start with an invocation by myself, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Mr. Miller. Please stand as you're able. Lord, I ask that you watch over this meeting and provide us guidance that we may make the best decisions in the interests of our customers and the citizens of King George. In your name we pray. Amen. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Miller, are there any amendments to the agenda?
No, sir.
Moving on to public comment. Is there anybody here in the audience that would like to make public comment on matters pertaining to the Service Authority? Seeing nobody in the audience, Mr. Dines, is there anybody online? All right, no one's online. We will close public comment. Reports of members of the board. Ms. Binder?
No report at this time.
Ms. Cleveland?
Yes, I do have one thing, and I was hoping that M. Bowden was here this evening, but I will catch up with them at another time. I wanted to ask them about this. One of my constituents informed me that every time the fire hydrant in front of his house is used, it must interact with his water flow in his house because he's getting dirty water for like an hour after it's being used, and it happens pretty much every time. So we're trying to figure out, what could be causing that.
Just to tell you, that will always happen. Whenever a fire hydrant's opened, there's sediment in the fire hydrant line itself, and when you open it up and you don't have it at full pressure, it causes a vacuum on the line, which sucks some of the sediment that's out at the bottom of the fire hydrant back into the main line. So it takes a while. It takes a bit to clear. That problem occurs whenever somebody opens a fire line. We have it kind of actually regularly in Hop Yard whenever the contractors open the fire hydrants. So what is the reason they're opening a fire hydrant that often is really kind of the question.
I'm not really sure why they were opening it up, but what he was telling me is apparently the lines are not supposed to be crossing, and I'm not really sure the technicality and the engineering around it, but what he was concerned about is he said that the line should not be crossing, his line shouldn't be crossing with the line for the fire hydrant, like be combined with it.
They all are. The fire hydrant lines and our service lines are all on the same potable water line. You have a main trunk line and they just run off of it. So they're all connected to the exact same trunk line. So what happens when you open the fire hydrant, the sediment that's collected on the bottom of the run that goes out to the fire hydrant gets sucked back in because of the vacuum pressure of the water going by in the main trunk line. When you open it up and it's not fully opened, it creates a vacuum back and you suck some of that sediment back in. So you get discolored water until they blow it out. You can call the maintenance staff. They come and blow out the lines all the time when that's an issue. I know because I call them quite often for Hop Yard to do that. So if he's having that problem, really just call the service authority and have them come out to flush the lines to make sure they get rid of the sediment for him.
Ms. Cleveland, if you have an address too, we can send them out there.
Okay, yeah, and it's just that particular address too. All
Okay.
the other houses nearby aren't being affected by it, so.
Okay. Once you get the address, I can have our
Okay,
crews go
yeah,
out there.
thanks.
Anything else?
Nope, that's it, thank you.
Ms. Kupka?
No report, thank you.
And for myself, I did attend a meeting for the Potomac Landing Development to discuss some of the water issues and construction issues associated with that, and we'll be bringing some of that stuff up later here in reports and whatnot. So moving on, consent agenda.
I move to accept the consent agenda as written.
Second.
I have a motion made and properly seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. Public presentations, report from County Attorney Ms. Lackey on the design build guidelines.
Good evening. I just wanted to do a quick introduction of the concept of design build. It's something that the Board of Supervisors, you can't hear me. It's something that the Board of Supervisors is currently considering. So this board could act of its own accord, or it could wait for action by the Board of Supervisors. But just as a brief introduction, design build is when there is a contract with one entity to both design and build a facility. So instead of hiring a design team and then hiring a construction firm, you hire one firm to perform both tasks. This is permitted by Virginia Code. However, in order to use this particular type of procurement, which is sometimes called an alternative form of procurement, you have to have guidelines in place for the selection and even just the composition of your selection team for this type of contract. So there is a proposed design build guideline framework in your agenda packet. This evening, as I was saying, I was anticipating this would be informational only at this time, that I would bring it back if there was interest in adopting this, but it just provides a little more flexibility if there's a project that has design elements that are unusual, or if it's something that needs to be fast tracked. It's a way to possibly find efficiencies. And again, it's not the sole means of procurement, but it's just an alternative means of procurement if it was something that this board was interested in doing.
So I'll jump in real quick. I think one we're going to want to at least marry it up to whatever the supervisors are going to do, assuming they adopt something that's design build. If they don't, for some reason, I would recommend that we go off and do that ourselves. In particular, the things we do are a lot of times done as a design build option, just because they're complicated, require a lot of specialties, and aren't done very often. Want to build a wastewater treatment plant? It's really complicated design. There's lots of specialists that do that. Most often, you see the counties in the state using that design build process for water treatment plants, wastewater treatment plants. So it's pretty common on this side of the fence in the sewer and water to do it. But I do think, my opinion would be, if the Board of Supervisors adopts something, we should try to mirror that so that we have consistency within the county. If for some reason they decide they don't ever want to do design build or allow it in the county, that we step in and look at the framework ourselves for allowing it on the service authority side. That's just my thoughts.
Mr. Chair, I just want to make a statement. For the two of us that are down at the end and Mr. Dines up there, it is very hard for us to hear what our colleagues, especially Ms. Lackey, is saying. Is there any way to improve that a little bit? It's coming in as a mumble somewhat. Even Mr. Parker is a little mumbled. Testing 1, 2, 3.
So just
Is that any
testing from
better?
my mic to see if the folks on the end can hear me a little bit better now.
I also don't think this fan is helping. Thank you very much.
So are there any other questions or comments for Ms. Lackey?
I just have one question, Ms. Lackey, and I apologize because you may have said this. I couldn't really hear that good, but why did this come up?
So the schools are kind of being our guinea pigs, so to speak. They've had a grant funding that they needed to use expeditiously, and so they've chosen to adopt a guideline procedure and to use this method. So in the course of working with procurement on that, because procurement does work on behalf of the school board, it came to my attention that there wasn't an existing policy on behalf of the board of directors or the board of supervisors.
In your experience, is it typical that you would have something like this?
It's pretty common. In my former jurisdiction, I think they adopted one maybe in like the 2018 time period. So it's been around for a while. Some jurisdictions have used it. It is very common, commonly used by schools, especially for school facilities, but it can have other uses as well.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Just quickly, because I couldn't hear, unfortunately, anything when Ms. Lackey had originally said, is this the same as the construction manager at risk or a little different?
It's a little bit different. So in construction manager at risk, you still have a consultant who is your design, your architectural consultant. With this form, you have one entity that both designs and builds. So from that perspective, the liability shifts to them both for design of the facility as well as construction. So from that perspective, there's also possibly some additional advantages. But if you want to maintain more control over the design, construction manager at risk is something that this board could also consider. It's usually only used, construction manager at risk, that is usually only used with very large scale projects. I think the state actually used to have a multi-million-dollar minimum for using construction manager at risk, whereas design build you could actually use for kind of small projects where you need a design component as part of some kind of rehabilitation or renovation project.
I would like both because I've seen with the courthouse, the construction manager at risk has been quite successful. And it has probably saved the county quite a bit of money as opposed to the project that renovated this building we're in right now.
Sure, I'd be happy to prepare some guidelines for those as well.
Any other questions or comments? So I guess, are we all in agreement that we should get a construction manager at risk for the service authority, some guidelines for that, and see what the supervisors do for the for design build, and go from there. Is that acceptable? So we'll wait to see what they do on the design build and try to mimic what they do. If they accept one, if they don't, we'll take a stab at it ourselves, get one ourselves.
Sure, I'll be happy to bring him back.
Is there anything else, Ms. Lackey?
That's all I have.
All right, moving on. We don't have any agency reports, so we're moving on to presentations and reports. Interim General Manager, the AMI project.
Yes, sir. So just wanted to keep this in front of you. This is obviously a major project for us, and just give you a regular update. Fortiline is the contractor that we are utilizing, and they are moving forward, obviously, with the meter installs. About 250 additional meters have been installed, and that I'm just reading this. Okay. We are evaluating signal sending / receiving issues affecting approximately 20 meters on the courthouse water system. And then the service authority staff is working on the problem meters, boxes that have infiltrated with sand and silt, and they need to be replaced. And we have some deep meter boxes that are always a problematic situation. Certainly, if you have any questions about this, Mr. Eisenbeis could probably answer some things as well.
Are there any questions on the AMI? No?
Okay.
Well, you're still up, I guess. Just a discussion on the lead and copper exceedance from September 2022.
Right. So, we had a number of exceedances. 17 of the 20 required samples were collected, analyzed, and results received, and there was no exceedances noted in these samples. The 3 samples that are outstanding were collected and sent to Bowden's laboratory on the 30th, and they have results are anticipated sometime within the next several weeks. As you recall, Bowdoin did a very good job of presenting, what the process is and what's all involved in this. And I think they properly noted that, it's going to be a big deal in the future. And I think we've also explained to you the fact that through the AMI, the automatic meter reading project, we are also identifying what the, for lack of a better word, the infrastructure of every system that we're installing, so that we know, is there lead and copper, what's the structure going into the property owner's residence. And then what that allows us to do is we're downloading that into a spreadsheet that then we'll pull, and then we'll be able to figure out just how many are going to require upgrading. I think, as Bowdoin indicated at when they gave you an update, there's really a lot of uncertainty about this in terms of, is the county, is the service authority going to have to make the actual repairs? There's a lot of overreach, if you will, of the feds on this one, and I think that there's still a lot of uncertainty. We have until September of 2024 to basically compile all of our data and get that in. And then the next step is kind of the unknown, but we're monitoring it. And Bryce Young is obviously involved in that. John Eisenbeis is very heavily involved in that. And then, of course, Miss Norris Barker is very much involved in this, and is kind of, working as kind of the point on this, because she's very closely involved in the meter reading project. But we are staying on top of it, and we're working also in conjunction with Bowdoin on their role in all this as well, because they're to report as well. And you may have recalled there were issues in the Dahlgren district that required us to do these notifications, and so those have all been taken care of. But just wanted to keep you updated on that.
No, just I want to clarify something. I think I remember when I was talking to Bowdoin, it seems, at least in some of the Dahlgren system, the issues aren't with our pipes. They're with the pipes in the houses. That's where the issue's coming from. They're not, the pipes that we have aren't lead and copper, but the
Right.
pipes in the houses are.
And you still have to note it. You still have to maintain the records on it. And then the question becomes, what happens after that?
Yeah.
So, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to make the note that it's the old houses have old pipes, and that's where we're seeing our issue. Is where we test the water tests actually come out of people's houses. They're not, we don't just go and get those out of our own system. They come from an end user's house.
Right.
So so you get whatever the house puts in it as well. So just wanted to note that, make sure I wasn't going crazy. And then is there anything else on that?
That's it on that.
And the last one is county engineer project updates. Mr. Young.
Is that better? All right.
Perfect.
All right. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Just to update, the ARPA water grant has been submitted, receiving reimbursements monthly. The wastewater grant, we got the rest of the documents submitted that they were requesting. The interconnection projects are currently in the final stages of design, preparing to put those out to bid in the spring. Arnold's Corner well replacement, preparing for the bidding process. The SAF well has been, the emergency replacement has been completed. Perkins Corner decommissioning project, the design work's still underway for interconnect and within the Hop Yard wastewater treatment plant. And that is all the new updates.
Are there any questions for Mr. Young?
I had one question. I just had one question. Mr. Miller, I know that when we were looking at the lead and copper and identifying the areas that they were, and Bowdoin had said that they could bid on that project. Are we at a point that they will do that, or where are we with that?
So that's one of the things that I think that what I was perhaps trying to emphasize, that we think that can be done in-house because we are collecting the data right now. I think and Bryce has been involved in it, and John Eisenbeis, and I'll certainly allow them to speak, if they feel otherwise. But I think the feeling is we are collecting the data, and then what we will be able to do is take the data, utilize it, and then be able to start the tracking that we need to do. I think the one concern we had with using Bowdoin was that it would change the existing contract that you have with them, or it would require almost a whole new RFQ process, and therefore they would have to do it competitively. They have requirements that they have to do because they are your operator, which is included in the contract, to do their lead and copper testing. And the way we do it is as Mr. Parker indicated, we provide sampling material, I guess, bottles, I guess is the best way to describe it, at the homeowner's location. They take it, we take our crews, they're the ones who bring it out, then they take the sample, and then we give it to Bowdoin, and they sample it. So that's how that's done. But I don't think that we will need to bring in a third party to answer your question.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Young. Moving on, actually, Mr. Young's going to have another one. It's action items. We're going to talk about Donnelly Concrete.
Yes, sir. This is a exception to the mandatory connection for Donnelly Concrete. They are in the Oakland Park service area within the mandatory connection vicinity. However, the Oakland Park system is operating near capacity and wouldn't have capacity to support them. So the exception would be for a concrete plant only, which is his proposed solution or his proposed use of the property. And this would allow him to have a well drilled for use of making concrete. Any questions?
So the long story short on this is Donnelly Concrete wants to put a plant out near in the industrial park, and there's not enough water to supply them their needs for making concrete. It's just the system currently doesn't have that capacity. Maybe sometime way in the future it will, but it doesn't at this time. So for them to be able to use the property to create to build a concrete plant there. It's a concrete batch plant, and I'm guessing what they're putting there. They need a well on site, and that's going to require them to do their own permitting and stuff to get that done. But that's kind of their issue.
My concern is how much water they're withdrawing, especially since we're going to be looking to get off of ground water, especially for places that would be considered in the service area.
Yeah, so So kind of Mr. Young and I already discussed this. That's going to be their problem, so to speak. They're going to have to apply to, it's a commercial well, so it's not like your house well. They're going to have to apply it for, I think it's anything over 1,000 gallons has to be applied for, a permit has to be applied for through VDH and DEQ. Whether or not VDH or DEQ grants them a permit or gives them the capacity that they want on the well, that's kind of, that's Donnelly Concrete's issue. They'd have to go through the permitting process and see what the state would allow them to have as a well there. And it's going to be it's going to be permitted similar to what our wells are, but at a lower volume of water, I would expect. Still going to be many thousands of gallons a day.
I have a couple questions. So this is their land, right? Okay. And do they already have a company there? I'm confused.
So no, Donnelly Concrete's a fairly large concrete company in the area. They pretty much do the foundations for almost every major housing developer in the area. So they pour concrete all over the place. What they're looking to do is set up a plant here to do concrete. Now, my understanding is they're probably going to use their these trucks that mix on site, but they need water. You put in your aggregate stone, your Portland cement, whatnot, and your fill of water tank, and the trucks portion out each of them and mixes concrete as you go. So they're going to use it more as a staging area as opposed to like a pre-mixed concrete plant, where you would see like Cheney or somebody who have a pre-mixed concrete plant. So it's more of a staging area, but you're still going to have those tanks are 1,000 gallons or something like that of water of a shot per truck. So what they're looking at doing is staging that, and in Donnelly Concrete, they're going to be using it for building houses here in King George is what they're going to be doing, and towards Westmoreland, anywhere they can drive within, I don't know, an hour.
So this is they're already there. This is their land. We don't have anything to do with the approval of this operation. It's just they're asking for a well.
If I could interject, so your current regulations require connection to the King George County Service Authority system if you're within, is it 1,000 feet, or if I think that's the situation is they should have to connect to us. But what Mr. Young is telling us is that we don't have the capacity. If we did it, it would affect our abilities to service them.
Okay, I understand now. Thank you.
So what we're looking to do is, and this is under an action item, I think we need to vote whether or not we give them a variance on that, and allow them to pursue getting permitted and building their own well. That's what they're looking to do. Is there any questions or comments on that?
I have one more question. So when we have capacity, can we ask them to go onto the well because they are in the area? And I know that is an area that will be, I mean, that's where other things are happening. So
In the proposed exception, this would be for the concrete purposes only. So if he decided to put some other use of potable water on site, then he would be required to connect. It would be just for the concrete use only.
And so it would be a permit with DEQ. So if DEQ chose to not renew the permit, do you know how long the permit would last for?
I'm not sure how long DEQ would grant the permit for them.
DEQ's according to DEQ, when we met with them last time, they're shortening the window on which permits are allowed to be open. It's only, I think, 5 years or something. It used to be quite a long period of time, but they're gonna start checking renewal on permits much more often, with the sole purpose of shutting down wells when they can. And commercial wells are high on their hit list. So I think based on what DEQ is doing anyway at this time, as soon as water in the volume they need becomes available, I don't think DEQ is going to renew their permit. I think that's just the way DEQ is going to roll with any commercial wells.
Okay, thank you.
I move to approve
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Mr. Miller just wanted me to chime in. You could condition it on some of the terms like Ms. Bender was describing. So if you wanted to put a time limit, you probably, would need to give them some reasonable amount of time to connect and also to recoup their costs for drilling a well. But that is something that you all could consider if you so chose. The way Mr. Young has proposed is that this exemption would be specific to the use. So if in the future they change the operation from concrete business to something else, then if there was capacity at that time, they would be required to connect.
That's why I asked the question, because I know to put in a well, it's quite a bit of, a lot of money goes into it. So, I didn't want that to be, if we approve it, then, they put it in 2 years later, they have to take it away.
I think we could put in that on their permit renewal, at the time of their permit renewal for the well, that if capacity is available on our system, they must connect at that time. I think that would probably be pretty fair.
So the exception would be at the time of permit approval, if there is capacity available, they would need to connect. And the exception would not be valid, correct? Yes.
So if I understood Mr. Parker, if at the time of the initial term, when their permit renewal is up, that would be when they would be asked to connect if there is capacity at that time.
I move to approve a conditional exception for Donley Concrete from the mandatory connection to the King George Service Authority water system bylaw, with the exception that if a permit renewal is asked, at the permit renewal, if it's asked that we have capacity, that they connect at that time.
Second.
I have a motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. Donley Concrete is granted the exception with the note that at the time of well permit renewal, that if there's capacity on our system, they'll be required to connect at that time. Moving on, General Manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just pointing out the couple of items on the General Manager's report. One is a reminder that, okay, well, let's start at the top. So Mr. Parker referenced it in his board report that there was a meeting held with the developer of the Potomac Landing West, I guess it is. And as you recall, back in 2021, and maybe even before, I know since I've been in the position, there was one proposal that came forward. I think the board looked at some others, but before me, but there is a desire to perhaps connect to the public water system, to the Fairview Beach / Potomac Landing water system, with the idea of perhaps building a well at the top of the hill of Potomac Landing Drive and 218. I need to just ask direction. Are you comfortable with us engaging in those kind of discussions? Continue working with the developer on a proposal that would ultimately have to come before the board. There's a number of things I think that we have to get worked out in terms of discussions with Virginia Department of Health, who has provided the funding in the form of a $5 million grant, and of which the well in Potomac Landing and Fairview Beach, the third well is slated to be funded by some of that grant money. And so we just need to make sure that we could involve the Potomac Landing developer in this process. I believe their plan would be to have some kind of a cost reimbursement. Perhaps they build it or they build parts of it. But I really just need direction to stay involved in the discussion, if that's okay.
So just to kind of highlight it, what we discussed with them is we have budgeted to do a new well on the system, whether it's in the Fairview Beach or over in Potomac Landing. There's a new well to be installed, location to be determined. So the kind of the discussion became, if we put the well up top, and maybe we put the well in, they as part of their construction build the filters and whatnot, however it works out. We'd be looking to kind of jointly do that. One of the we had discussions with Bryce, and there's other ways to do that too, but one advantage of having the well up top is you have gravity pressure to feed the rest of the system, so you'll get better pressure in both Potomac Landing and Fairview Beach out of having the well up on top the hill and gravity feeding down. We can also potentially put the well at the bottom and pump up the tanks and gravity feed from there and supply it. But basically what Mr. Miller I think is looking for is direction to allow him to talk to the developer and see if there's anything that kind of jointly makes sense is how it would be. I don't know if it'll go anywhere, but it seems to me that it would make sense to see if we can work together to get a well and some better pressure on the system for both Fairview Beach and Potomac Landing, if that's possible.
Mr. Chair, I think we all know that right now, the surest way to try to reduce some of the customer debt is by increasing the customer base through new connections. So I would like to see further development on this issue. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I agree. This point I want to make sure is part of, this got hung up at the beginning because we have to have 50 connections to do the budget of the service authority. And with Hop Yard nearing its lifespan for homes, we have to make sure that we still can get the 50 connections.
Yeah, and there's 80 connections possible here, plus the rest of this development actually, because there's more than just this portion that we're talking about. If this well got installed, you're talking about not just this particular section, but it would feed the other sections that are coming up in that particular development. So there would be more than this particular connection. I think what I have to reiterate is it's got to be financially feasible for both us and them. I don't know if it is now. It might all blow up and be not possible, but I think it's worth looking into. And if everybody's amenable to it, I'd like to direct staff to keep working with the Potomac Landing developers to see if there's something that can be worked out that's amenable to the service authority and them, because I think it would provide it'd be a good service to our customers if something could work out. Is everybody kind of in agreement on that?
Mr. Chairman, can I ask Ms. Lackey a question? So I originally recused myself of this conversation for Potomac Landing. Can I add comments to this discussion or no?
I think I would need some additional time to develop a full opinion on that, but I think Mr. Parker's just asking for consensus at this point, so I can do a detailed analysis before a vote is required.
Thank you.
Mr. Park, just for transparency, do we have to say what the conflict of interest is, or for on the record?
Ms. Lackey?
So we're not taking a vote, but in an abundance of caution, it says it's a proposed transaction with Potomac Landing. If Ms. Cleveland would just disclose the nature of her relationship with, or potential relationship of a family member with the developer of Potomac Landing?
So my husband is the real estate broker, but he is not the developer and doesn't own the land.
Thank you.
So the three members not abstaining, are we good with directing staff to just explore the option of putting the new well up top that's already planned? If it works out, obviously financially for both us and the developer. Okay, we're in agreement.
Thank you. We'll work on that. And, obviously the final agreement has to be approved by the board, so. The only other items on there, I'm going to skip the to-do list. I think we've reported on the non-capital. Oh, okay. There is some good information there. So I did report to you on the AMI project. Let me just provide some update on the inflow and infiltration project. Mr. Young is available if you have any questions, but over 7,000 feet of sewer pipes were cleaned and inspected. Several sources of I&I were identified and are working on a plan to address those. The Payne well, which is a backup well that it's utilized, but it's part of the Dahlgren system. Upgrades have been completed on that. And I think that the low-income housing, we are removing ourselves from any further notice on that because I think the system that program is over with. And obviously your rates have been implemented and they are on this current billing cycle. So I'm sure that Ms. Norris Parker is getting calls about that. And if anybody has any, please send them our way. The only other items are just a reminder, your next board meeting is not here. It is in the boardroom back on the 19th. And then there is a joint board meeting with the Board of Supervisors scheduled for the 21st at 6 p.m. in the boardroom. And that's it.
So I just had a question on the joint meeting. Have we gotten any resolution on whether on VDH or DEQ's opinion on the funds?
We have not gotten anything or anywhere with DEQ. I think that the next step is going to be to meet with the gentleman who's the third-party administrator on the VDH funds, which is the $5 million. And so Mr. Young and I will set something up and ask those kind of questions. I think that in talking further with Ms. Hahn, she felt that we probably are okay at this point, but at the time, I think there was a concern because there were some of our ARPA funds they hadn't been closed out yet, and now they have, so that it may be an irrelevant type of conversation, but we'll explore that.
Anything else? All right, looking for a motion.
I move that we adjourn to Tuesday, September 19th, 2023 at 5:30 in the boardroom.
Second.
I have a motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Motion carries. We are adjourned to Tuesday, September 19th, 2023 at 5:30 p.m. in the Robert H. Combs boardroom.